All right, so we are diving into Witch Girl's Adventures.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
from what I'm looking at here, this is not your average role-playing game. There's some really
Yeah.
interesting stuff
It's a unique game.
going on here.
Yeah, it really is.
So let's get right into it.
Okay, great.
And it seems like one of the most important things is
Yeah.
this idea of creating your character.
Right.
Your, what do they call it? A star, right?
Yeah, you create a character in Witch Girl's Adventures. It's called a star, and it's like your main character
Okay.
in your witchy story. It's like writing
Yeah.
your own kind of like witchy coming-of-age story,
Got it.
almost,
Okay.
in a way.
Yeah, so like how do we even begin to do that? Is it all about just picking like a cool aesthetic and a really powerful magic type, or
Well, no, not necessarily,
okay.
because Witch Girl's Adventures uses a system of 6 core attributes: body, mind, senses, will, social, and magic. And these attributes determine a lot about your character.
Yeah.
And one of the things that makes it really interesting is that each attribute
Okay.
is tied to a specific die type.
Oh.
So, for instance, body is associated with a certain kind of die. Mind is associated with a certain kind of die. And depending on what die you have, that determines how strong you are in that area.
So I'm looking at this right, and I'm seeing that a witch with like a D8 in social, that's going to be a much different experience than someone with like a D4, right?
Absolutely. A D8, you're going to be very smooth, very charismatic, very good at talking your way in and out of situations.
Right.
A D4 in social, you're probably going to be a little bit more awkward, maybe a little bit more introverted, and maybe not as successful in social situations.
Right. You might be great at thinking about it, but then when you go to actually do it, it all falls apart.
Exactly. Yeah, you might have a great plan, but if you have a D4 in mind, there's a good chance that plan's going to go completely sideways.
I love it. I love it. And I also noticed that looking at the materials here, that they really encourage you to think about these attributes as a part of the story that you're telling about this witch, right?
Yeah.
So even before we start the game, we can look at these attributes and kind of use them as like a springboard
Right.
to think about who they are.
Absolutely. You can use them to influence your backstory.
Right.
So, for example, a character with a D8 in body, maybe they were a track and field star in high school.
Yeah.
Maybe they were really athletically gifted.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas a character who has a D4 in mind, maybe they grew up, with werewolves or something.
Yeah.
Right, where formal education wasn't really prioritized. So you can use those attributes to really kind of flesh out the backstory of your character and make them feel like real people with real histories.
Yeah, I love that.
Even before the game begins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not just mechanics, it's like
Exactly.
part of the storytelling.
Exactly. Yeah, they're like narrative seeds that you can plant, and then they grow into these
I love it.
really interesting stories.
I love that. Okay, so we've got these witches. They've got their backstories, their strengths and weaknesses, but what about the magic system? Because it's not called Witch Girl's Adventures for nothing.
Right, exactly. Magic is like the heart of this game. And what makes it really cool is it's not just like a generic, everybody gets the same magic kind of thing.
Yeah, they've got a whole bunch of different magic types.
Yeah, tons of flavors. You got your alteration magic to like change things up, conjuration magic, that's your classic summoning stuff. Oh, and cybermancy. For the witches who are all about the tech.
I can already see where this is going. It's like limitless possibilities.
And that's just scratching the surface. And of course, it's not like you start out as this all-powerful sorceress, right?
Right. There's got to be like some kind of ranking system, yeah. My little witch fresh out of witch school can't just conjure up a hurricane on day one.
You got it. Witch Girl's Adventures uses magic type ranks. They call them MTRs for short. So basically, the higher your MTR in a certain type of magic, the more powerful the spells you can cast with it. Start small time, maybe light a few candles with your mind, then work your way up to teleporting and conjuring storms.
That's cool. So it's like you're not just becoming a better witch overall, you're mastering these specific types of magic.
Yeah. Like you could be an amazing conjurer, but maybe alteration magic just like totally goes over your head.
Oh, I bet. Speaking of which, there's some really wild spells in here. Like I saw something called Firebug. What's that all about?
Oh, Firebug. That's a fun one. Perfect for those witches who, maybe like to play with fire a little too much.
Yeah.
It lets them control existing flames. Imagine the possibilities. Talk about a recipe for chaos.
Oh, yeah. Definitely not one to use lightly. What about this one? Princess Kiss. Sounds kind of tame. Unless...
Oh, that's where things get interesting. Princess Kiss can actually be used to break other alteration spells.
Yeah.
So, like, if someone got turned into a frog,
classic witch prank.
Right. Princess kiss him, and boom, back to normal.
Okay, I love it. This is brilliant. But all this talk about spells, it makes me wonder, how do witches even power this stuff? It's got to drain you using all that magic.
Well, they use zap points. Think
Okay.
of it like, witches need their coffee, right? Zap is a witch's fuel.
So bigger the spell, more zap you got to use.
Yeah, exactly. A little cantrip might just cost you 1 zap point.
Yeah.
But something more intense, like a big ritual or something, that'll cost you a lot more.
So you got to be strategic about it.
Oh, for sure. Can't just go around zapping everything willy-nilly. Which actually reminds me, this world isn't all just about individual witches, There's a whole society they got to deal with. Rules, regulations, you name it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Can't just have powerful magic users running around without some kind of structure. What would that look like?
Well, for one thing, they've got the Witches' World Council.
Catchy. What do they do?
They're kind of like, how do I put this? Imagine like a magical United Nations, right?
Okay, I can see it.
They make the laws, they keep things running smoothly, and most importantly, they make sure the mundane world doesn't find out about magic.
Ah, so like the magical version of the Men in Black.
Yeah, something like that. And get this, their headquarters is this super secret pocket dimension.
A pocket dimension. Sounds intense.
Oh, it is. They call it the Grand Mall. Picture this. Shops overflowing with magical goodies, statues of famous witches, you name it.
Seems like my kind of place. So it's all about keeping the magical world in check, making sure no rogue witches expose everything.
Exactly. And it's not just about the council, right? Remember those witch factions? You got your outsiders, your rustics, your sorceresses. They each have their own ideas about how magic should work, who should use it, the whole deal.
Yeah, so there are internal conflicts too, not just magical threats.
Oh, absolutely. It's like, imagine trying to be friends with someone who doesn't even know magic exists. Right. Or think about the pressure of trying to fit in with these high society sorceresses when you'd rather be out in the forest communing with nature. It's all part of navigating this world.
Okay, so we've got all these witches running around, casting spells, dealing with the Witches' World Council. But what about the other stuff? The creatures, the beasties, the things that go bump in the night? What's lurking out there in Witch Girl's Adventures?
Oh, Witch Girl's Adventures does not disappoint in that department.
Lay it on me.
They have a whole section called Casting Call, and let me tell you, it is packed with creatures. Some are, your classic fantasy fare, but others, they're pretty out there.
Out there good or out there hide all the broomsticks kind of good?
Oh, a little of both. For instance, there's a creature called a magivore, and get this, it feeds on magical energy.
Okay, that's kind of terrifying, but also kind of cool. So, what happens if a magivore gets loose in a library full of spell books? Do the books just go blank?
Pretty much. It can even affect witches directly. Imagine trying to cast a spell and your mind just goes blank. That might be a magivore snacking on your concentration.
Yikes. Writer's block is one thing, but having a creature literally eat your magical energy is a whole other level. All right, so that's weird, but what about something a little more classic fantasy?
Well, they've got chimeras.
The classics never go out of style.
Right. But these aren't your grandma's chimeras. We're talking 3 heads, each with its own personality. Trying to wrangle one of those is a recipe for disaster.
Oh man, talk about a 3-headed headache. You mentioned some creatures were truly out there. Anything that would make a seasoned witch sleep with the lights on.
Oh, for sure. There's the horror. This thing is the stuff of nightmares. Legend has it, just hearing its voice can drive you insane.
Pass. Hard pass. But it makes you think all these creatures, they're more than just monsters to defeat, right? They're part of this world. They have their own roles to play.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just a us versus them situation. These creatures have their own cultures, their own motivations. Like, take banshees, for example. In Witch Girl's Adventures, they're actually corrupted fae, transformed by this powerful ancient sorceress.
Okay, so there's a story there. It's not just random shrieking.
Oh, no. They actually feed off of sorrow and despair. They need it to survive. So it's not just about defeating them, it's about understanding them, figuring out why they are the way they are.
That adds a whole other dimension to the game. It's not just about brute force, it's about strategy, empathy even. Which brings us to the unsung hero of any role-playing game, the director. What does it take to be a good director in the world of Witch Girl's Adventures?
That's a great question. It's really a balancing act, you know. You're part storyteller, part referee, part world builder. You have to keep the story moving, make sure everyone's having fun, but also like stay true to the rules of the world.
So like a good director can really make or break the experience.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Witch Girls Adventures actually gives a lot of creative freedom to the director. Want to create a whole adventure based on, say, local ghost stories? Go for it. Want to introduce a brand new magical creature? Be my guest.
I love that. It's like the game gives you a framework, but ultimately it's up to the players and the director to really bring it to life. That's what I love about tabletop role-playing games. It's more than just a game, right? It's this collaborative storytelling experience. You get to step into this whole other world, become someone else, and go on these incredible adventures.
It's true. It's all about letting your imagination run wild.
Well said. And that, my friends, is Witch Girls Adventures in a nutshell. A world full of magic, intrigue, and a healthy dose of the unexpected. From quirky spells to terrifying creatures, it's a wild ride from start to finish.
Don't forget those complicated characters. Those backstories are killer. And that magic system, don't even get me started.
So listeners, next time you're looking for an adventure, grab your dice, gather your friends, and get ready to unleash your inner witch. And hey, if you do happen to run into a Mad Four, maybe just leave it a few spare dice, as a peace offering.
Can't hurt. And until next time, may your magic be potent and your adventures legendary.